So you're getting ready to watch a video that I've actually made a few months ago, several months ago. I don't even remember exactly when I made it. And I lost it. I misplaced it somewhere in a file or a folder. And I just recently found it. And so I've been going back and forth as to whether I wanted to play it or not. It seems like a pretty good video, so I think I want to play it. The problem is there's no camper in the background, and the leaves are green, and of course it's fall time now. So I thought, how am I going to play this video without a bunch of people complaining? This is not a video, a recent video. It's still a good video, and there's no reason why I can't play it. No reason to have spent all that time and effort editing a video and not having it on YouTube. So here it is. I want to give you the history of what we did here. As some of you may know, we were traveling the country, I think for 3 or 4 years. Going from national forest to national forest, just like, I don't know what you call it. I call it nomadic lifestyle. And it was okay. We were working 16 hours a day. It was miserable, and we had a heart attack for lunch every day. It was terrible. And so we were able to relax a little bit and live the nomadic lifestyle. But I tell you, it was not what we had imagined. We started out in a little pop-up camper, and it was great. We loved the pop-up camper. And we went through Mississippi and Tennessee and Virginia, was down in Florida. And I guess when we stopped to South Carolina, then Florida. In Florida, we were allowed to stay there for 3 months during hunting season. At the end of hunting season, someone burned down our camper, so then we built a little truck camper. And we put it on the back of the truck, and we traveled, I guess, for another 2 years with that. I don't know, it doesn't matter. It was just very stressful. A lot of homeless people, just a lot of things we didn't like about it. Yeah, we were always concerned somebody was going to burn down the camper on the back of the truck, and then the truck would be gone too. One August, I can't remember what year it was, let's say, I guess 2019, we decided we were going to give up the nomadic lifestyle, and we started looking for property. Well, Carolyn did. I don't want to take any credit for that. And she found several pieces. Now, the thing is we knew what we wanted to do. We liked the concept of living off grid. We liked the concept of being minimalist. Being in a pop-up camper, you know, you had to have very few things. And then, of course, we had this 6 foot by 4 foot truck bed that we had to live in. That was pretty minimalistic. And we liked that. But we didn't like the interaction with people. It was pretty stressful, especially after the pop-up camper burned down. Well, I wanted to move to Mississippi. I wanted to be close to the coast because we were in Florida and we got to stay right next to the coast for so long. But it turned out that Mississippi had a lot of regulations about living off grid and in tiny houses and different things because they had experienced a hurricane in its past, and they took funding from the federal government, at which point they basically signed a contract, I guess, with the federal government that they would put a lot of permitting requirements on tiny house living and permits for the house and how to build the house and all kinds of things. Now, the folks in Mississippi say, oh, they don't enforce those things, but it would have been really sad had we bought a piece of property in Mississippi and then not be able to do what we wanted to do with it. And so we had this idea of what we wanted. Of course, Carolyn and I had come up from larger pieces of property. She owned 8 acres when I met her. And then she sold that. Long story, don't want to get into that. And then we rented 8 acres, and that was really nice. It was only $350 a month with the house on it. I did backyard farming for the longest time. I had goats and sheep, all on a piece of property in a municipality. Had chickens and ducks. So we really knew what we wanted. Well, then she started looking for property in Missouri because we found Missouri and Tennessee were probably the best places to build a tiny house and live off grid. They just didn't have a lot of restrictions. As long as you stayed away from the St. Louis, the Columbia City, the city of Columbia, and the Kansas City area, the rest of the state is pretty friendly to this concept. Well, especially where we're at. Well, the first place she looked at, and it just didn't work out. It was 10 acres, it had a well, but the guy was just a little fishy to us. He didn't want to do a notarized deed, or whatever you call that, when you go to the deed company and they do all the paperwork transfer. He wanted to do this private deed. I forget what it's all called. And we went and looked at it, and it didn't have an entrance into the property. We would have had to put a culvert down and all that, and it would have cost us $10,000 just to be able to get the truck across the property, is what I was feeling like. Well, this was the second place she looked at, and I wasn't too sure about this place. It was 1.5 acres. and it was only $4,200. The other place was $7,000. This one had a well too. But believe it or not, the big selling point of this place was it had a trailer frame. Well, actually I had a trailer on it, but it was falling down. You can see the tongue there. We tore down the rest of the trailer. The mobile home is what it was. We tore it all down, and if you want to go check those out, you can go to my playlist, and they're all there. So we cleaned all that up, and I started building this tiny house, and I built it by myself. Now, the nice thing about the tiny house and building it myself was it was pretty simple to do, even though I didn't know how to build a house. Had it been bigger, I would have never finished it. I was getting burned out with it as it was, because I was making mistakes towards the end. At the beginning, I wasn't making any mistakes. And one of the mistakes I made, so aggravating, was I bought all this metal for the siding, and I messed up a cut. Now this metal was pretty expensive. The shipping cost was terrible, especially during the pandemic. So I messed up a cut, so now I have a seam there. I intend to put a piece of trim up one of these days to cover that, but I just never got around to it. It's hardly noticeable anymore. I was making more and more mistakes, and I was just up there on the roof. That was terrible, and I made my own rafters out of a drawing that my dad bought for me online. And I mean, it's a solid house. So it's all sitting on that trailer frame. Well, during this time, I got turned in by one of my subscribers for dumping waste out in the creek, which I wasn't. Well, he came out, the permit guy, the county code commissioner, what do you want to call him, came out. Somebody's going to say, oh, you don't live off grid. I hear it all the time. You don't live off grid because there's a county code commissioner. Well, every county has code commissioners. So we just got the floor done on this thing. And he comes up and says, hey, that's great. You're building a little house, aren't you, or shed? And he says, you're doing it on a trailer frame, which is fantastic because you don't have to have a permit to be on the trailer frame. Well, I said, well, oh, that's great. I didn't know that. I said, I built it under 200 square feet because the permit book says I didn't have to have a permit for that. Also, he says, true, you don't. But he says, nobody's going to question you as long as that tongue is there. So remember, the whole trailer frame was there at the time. I really felt good that I actually got turned in. The guy who turned me in actually did me a favor because now I'm very comfortable with this. There are many things in here that if I had to build it to code, it wouldn't have passed. The electric, for example. The electric wouldn't pass. I'm running it from the camper down there because that's where my solar system is. Got my charge controller and all that down there. It would not pass. All kinds of things they would say no to. All kinds of things they would say no to. Well, the thing is when you start getting into permits and inspections, the costs go up dramatically. First thing is I would have had to build it, I think, in order to live in it, I think it would have had to been 400 square feet. I mean, don't quote me on this. I don't remember exactly. So that means I would have had to double the size. So this was a $5,000 project. Then it turns into a $10,000 project. It would not have been feasible to do it, is my point. I wouldn't have been able to build it myself, so then I would have had to have contractors to come and build it. Well, the thing is most of the country now does not allow you to do what I did. In many parts of the country, I mean like 99% of the country, don't even allow you to park an RV on your property to live in for more than 2 weeks. You can do it here in this county. That's what's so nice about this county is they basically just leave you alone. Now, there is a place just down the road. Someone has put a Home Depot shed on bricks, on concrete bricks, in a trailer park, like a mobile home trailer park. So, and the county doesn't say anything to them. There are counties like this available throughout the country. There are not very many of them. There are pieces of property in counties like this one. There are tons of property around us. Carolyn sees them all the time. But imagine this. We now live in a country where safety is more important than freedom. And I think it was Benjamin Franklin. I'm not going to try to quote him exactly, so I'm penny bothered with the comments. I know I'm messing it up, but he's basically said that if you trade in freedom for safety, you won't have either. Well, that's what we got. We don't have safety in this country, and we don't have freedom. Because when you buy a permitted house, contractors come in, they build the house, it's all under permit, and the inspectors come out, the government inspectors come out, and they say, you don't have the right size door frame. Oh, okay, so how does that affect my safety? Well, it doesn't. What really happened was a politician got paid off by the door manufacturer, and now we passed a law that you have to have a specific door. That way you have to buy it from this particular company. Of course, I just made all that up, but that is the truth. That is how laws get made about building houses. There are all kinds of things that they didn't even have to do 20 years ago, 30 years ago, that we have to do now. Well, what changed? A house is a house. It's not like there's new technologies keeping the 2x4 up. So they just do it to line the pockets of people, companies, and politicians. So if I'd have done this in Mississippi, I'm certain that it would have not been legal. I just made a video recently in wood stoves. I said that we have to use wood stoves the way the government wants us to use the wood stoves, or they're going to go to the manufacturers and start banning wood stoves. And everybody's like, oh, I'm not going to follow any laws. That's a bunch of, and I've been getting cussed out. I can guarantee that 90% of these people who say I'm not going to follow the rules on the wood stove want to buy a house that is safe. They want to buy a house that an inspector can come in and say, oh yeah, you can hook up your electric here and it's completely safe. You're going to be able to get it insured. So I think it's a hypocrisy when people say, I'm not going to follow the rules of the government, but then expect the government to come and save them when there's certain things that they want. For example, food safety. I'm going to switch it just for a second. I made a poll recently, and one of them is do you think government should be responsible for food safety? Or should we have freedom? And of course, everybody's like, both. Well, I already told you what Benjamin Franklin said. You can't have both. The government doesn't actually inspect food to make sure it's safe. They only tell you when there's something wrong with it. They go into the company and say, hey, you got to put hair nets on. Okay, that's fine. Everybody's got hair nets on. I mean, really, think about this. The inspector comes into the building. The inspector comes up to the receptionist desk and says, yeah, I'm the FDA or the USDA, and I want to inspect your company. John Smith, please come to the front office. USDA is here for inspection. Everybody whips out their hairnets, they put them on, they do all their safety checks, they make sure everything's clean before they let the guy out onto the plant floor. And then as soon as the guy leaves, they take off the hairnets, and we're back to doing business as usual. The government doesn't do anything to make you safe. People expect safety and freedom when you're not going to get it. I would rather be free. I would rather this thing fall on my head and have the freedom to be able to do it, or it burned down and have the freedom to build it again, than be told I can't build it at all. So yeah, they've banned these pretty much throughout the country. So if you'll click this up next box, it'll take you to the next video where I talk about the well and how now government requires you to pay for the water that comes out of your well. So if I can inspire you to think about freedom instead of safety, so you can live your dreams. Thanks for watching.